What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the GSD Podcast. I'm so excited about our episode this week, guys. We have two great guests on that have some very exciting topics that I want to dive into with you both. But real quick, just to introduce you both, in the studio with us this week is Matt Singleton, who is the Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Oklahoma, which essentially, Matt, means you're the cybersecurity guy for the state, right?
I do the cool and the fun stuff, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah. So some cool stuff to talk about here. And then also joining us online is Paul Ziriax. Now, Paul is the Secretary of the State Election Board. Paul, thanks so much for joining us online, man.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Love it. So like I mentioned before, guys, before we got recording, this whole podcast is really just a platform for us to talk about state services, and you both are two individuals. Your teams are groups that work so much behind the scenes to provide safety and security for our state. Paul, you're obviously in the election side of things. Matt, you're in the cybersecurity side of things, and I want to talk about how these two things marry up and how your two teams work together. So real quick, for our audience that may not know too much about your teams, Paul, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your team does to provide election security on a daily basis?
Yeah, so the State Election Board is the state agency that was created by the Oklahoma Constitution in 1907 that is responsible for supervising the 77 county election boards and overseeing federal and state elections in our state. So, I always like to tell people when you talk about core services of government, you don't get much more core than the State Election Board, because without the State Election Board running elections, we wouldn't have a government. So we're very proud of the work we do at the State Election Board, and also we'll talk more about this as the show goes on, but very proud of our partnership with Matt and his team at Oklahoma Cyber Command.
Love it. So Matt, obviously cybersecurity is a really, it's a hot topic. I mean, because there's so much going on here, and a lot of just Oklahomans don't really understand cybersecurity. Can you tell us a little bit about your team, what you guys do to protect Oklahomans?
Sure. So our team is called Oklahoma Cyber Command. Mm-hmm. When they moved me into this position right at 18 months ago, can I still play the new guy card?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, 18 months for
18
sure.
Months,
yeah. We're about to celebrate Steve Harp's 1-year anniversary.
I know, isn't that crazy?
And we still play the new guy card with him, so that's fine.
Good. Well, when they asked me to step into the role, they basically gave me 4 objectives that they wanted me to meet. The first was to secure information, Oklahoma's information assets,
right,
and make them available. Seems to be competing,
I
right?
know, right? Yeah.
But it's important to have that balance when it comes to information security. So that was the first objective. The second objective was actually to take an enterprise approach to cybersecurity and compliance and privacy in the state of Oklahoma. The third was to create a culture of risk management within the state. So instead of cybersecurity being the folks that say no, I mean, a lot of times people talk about information security, and that's the team of no, right? That's not what we do here. We try to make decisions based on risk, and we can either accept a risk,
right,
we can defend against the risk, we can mitigate it, those types of things. That's the third objective that our team does, and the fourth one is something I'm really excited about, and that's really to promote a cybersecurity mentality across Oklahoma's workforce. Not just the state of Oklahoma, state employees, but let's talk about cybersecurity across the entire state of Oklahoma, and let's make Oklahoma a leader when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yep. So you talked about a lot of things there I want to dive into, but you mentioned one thing specifically about how you work with Paul's team, I guess just recently on the most recent elections, on making sure Oklahoma's elections were secure. So Paul, can you talk a little bit about how both teams work together and what your team does to make Oklahoma such a secure state when it comes to elections?
Yeah, and I think when you talk about running, a statewide election like the general election was, that had very heavy turnout, that saw a surge in voter registrations, that had record mail absentee and in-person absentee voting, heavy election day turnout. In fact, it had the most votes ever cast in a presidential election. 1.56 million votes were cast in that presidential election, the most ever. We had our highest turnout, 69.34% of registered voters, which that's the highest we've had in a long, long time in Oklahoma. And while there's no such thing as a perfect election, when you consider it was during a pandemic, it was a week after a major ice storm had pummeled our state. And we had record voter participation. I think it went really smoothly, and I just could not be prouder of Oklahoma's election officials, our poll workers, the county election boards, the state election boards. They just showed tremendous perseverance and professionalism. They have a real dedication to free and fair elections, and Oklahomans can be confident that here in Oklahoma we did things right. And part of what we did right in Oklahoma and what we do right, in my opinion, is election security. I remember not long after Matt became the chief information security officer, he and I had a meeting, and right out of the chute, he turned to me before we even said anything, and he said, Paul, I just want you to know, election security is our top priority here at Cyber Command, and Matt and his team did a wonderful job helping us, people out there, you mentioned the unification of IT and for state agencies earlier, Matt. And most of your viewers probably, have some idea what that means, but there are some agencies like the state election board that have been granted exemptions from that unification and consolidation, and that makes sense. And in my opinion, it's critical that election officials, maintain direct control over those systems that are used to do things like create ballots and program voting devices and tabulate votes. But even with that independence of the state election board IT system, we have a very, very close relationship with OMES and work hand in hand with them, with Cyber Command, with Matt, with the Chief Information Security Officer. Matt did some things like assign a permanent cybersecurity liaison to the state election board. He assigned cybersecurity engineers that work directly with that cybersecurity liaison and my team to analyze our systems, to look at ways to make them more secure. They even set up teams that did 24/7 monitoring of social media around the big elections, to make sure that if there was disinformation out there, that election officials knew about it and could combat that. So I just couldn't be prouder of the OMES team and Matt's team over at Cyber Command, because honestly, we could not have done this election without them.
Man, that is awesome.
I appreciate that, Paul. I mean, to be fair, Oklahoma Cyber Command is one small piece of the cog that made this whole thing work. And,
right.
And what I'll tell you is, I think the largest factor in the success of elections this time around was, and this actually predates me, Secretary Ziriax set up what we called the election security work group, probably 2.5 years ago at this point.
Yeah, we set that up for the 2018 cycle. It was shortly after the 2016 elections, and a lot of agencies belong to that, including Matt.
Yeah, so really a joint task force focused on how we secure elections.
Right. Included
our federal partners, our state partners, and that work group meets on a regular basis, and they talk through what the greatest threats are to elections and what we need to be doing.
I want to go back to what I said. The team that's involved in that security working group is wonderful, but I can't say enough about how much Cyber Command and OMES did to dedicate specific resources and to help the election board do things that we could not have done on our own. And as important as the working group is, and Matt is kind of he doesn't want to brag about himself all the time, so I'm going to do it.
He never does, man.
But we couldn't do it without his team. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So one thing I do want to say about the team is all the people on Oklahoma Cyber Command are here to make a difference, right? And that's why they came here. And Paul, I mean, there is no more noble cause in our book than defending our democracy. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. I know, right? Yeah. But I mean, that's really that was the approach that we took. And my first meeting with Secretary Ziriax and his team after I stepped into the role, I looked Paul in the eye and I said, Paul, you're my number one customer. And so we pulled the resources we needed to make sure that he was successful and that Oklahoma's elections were secure.
I love that. So Paul,
and Caden, I want to follow up just very briefly
please.
on that.
Yeah.
When you talk about election security, some of your viewers, may have an idea of what that means, but in my view, there are really three components of that. You've got cybersecurity. That's how do you secure your networks and your your computer systems, that kind of thing, right? And of course, Cyber Command is hip deep in all of that work. You've got the second one is misinformation and disinformation. If there is deliberate effort or even just a mistaken effort to get false information out about elections, the classic example of disinformation would be trying to tell you put out the word that it's going to be a really busy election day, so Democrats vote on Tuesday and Republicans vote on Wednesday.
Right.
And of course, nobody votes on Wednesday, so
right.
that's really an effort to disenfranchise people. And having Cyber Command using some of their tools to help us look for that kind of disinformation was very helpful. The third type, so you got cybersecurity, misinformation, and disinformation is number two. Number three is physical security, and a lot of those things are what the legislature comes up with. That's how you have chain of custody for absentee ballots. You've got how do you verify that the person who requested a ballot is eligible? How do you confirm that the person who's issued the ballot is the person who actually voted that ballot? And there's a long list of those things, but you take all those together, and that's how you have a secure election. And I think in Oklahoma, we do that really well.
Gotcha. Many people may not know, or really Oklahomans may not know, that Oklahoma is perceived nationwide as one of the top states for election security. Paul, can you kind of speak a little bit to what your team does that sets us apart from other states, and having people look at us as a nation leader in that area?
Well, I think you've seen almost every state in the country, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, really step up and try to enhance their security. I think some states probably do it better than others. I really like how we do it in our state. We mentioned the election security group. That's a combination of federal and state agencies that work together. County election boards have their own local security groups, where they work with local law enforcement and emergency managers and things like that. And I think other states are looking at models like that, where you have multi-agency groups working together. And nationally, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Matt, you know this very well based on a lot of the briefings. FBI also, made it a national priority to try to protect our elections. But I think one of the things that makes Oklahoma such a leader in election security is that our Cyber Command in general is such a leader in securing all of our state government systems. A true story. I think everybody probably heard, after the 2016 elections, that there were a number of states that were targeted, by Russian actors, bad actors that originated in Russia. And I was surprised when I found out that Oklahoma was on that list of being targeted. But the good news is, even back then, before we had our working security group, Matt's predecessor and the predecessor for, I don't think we called it Cyber Command back then, but that team that was in place, in 2016, successfully defended Oklahoma's systems back then. I mean, the way it was described to me at the time is that it was essentially that the targeting of Oklahoma was really like kind of a burglar casing your house, walking around looking for open windows and not finding any. And not only did the burglar not get in the house, the election systems were locked inside a safe, hidden in a closet in the house. So, it wasn't even that they got to where they could poke around the election systems. They couldn't even get into the house to look for the election system. So, and that's just a testament, from a little over 4 years ago, of how good it was then, and it's so much better even now, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take this opportunity to brag on your IT team a little bit too. Jay and his team over there, they're very cybersecurity conscious. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times they're already a step ahead of us, saying, hey, we think we should be doing this. Or, hey, we're going to go upgrade all the VPN concentrators out in the mm-hmm. county election. Hey, great idea. Let's do that. And so it really is a collaborative relationship. But because he's got strong IT leadership, they're making our job easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to dive in real quick. And Paul, side note, I really like the example you gave there about a burglar kind of walking around and they didn't even see an open window, which is a huge compliment to just how seriously Oklahoma takes cybersecurity. But give us some context around, because we talk about the defense of cybersecurity during the elections and how you had an eye on social media, web platforms, different things like that. Give us like a number, like if you can, I don't know if you can or not, of like how many times that that you have to identify a threat either on social media or on a web platform or anything like that.
Oh, wow.
Is that a big question?
That's a big question. So you have different levels of severity, right?
Right.
And so at any given time, we've probably got a dozen in what I call investigations underway at any given point in time, right?
Really? And people don't even realize that. That's the compliment, is that a lot of times people don't realize that we have 12 active investigations going on at state cyber, whether it's qualified as an attack or not. Somebody who is somewhere they shouldn't be, essentially.
Yep. And so we've had great support from state leadership to build out the capabilities of this team. We've brought on some amazing talent, and these guys, I mean, they pride themselves in being the quiet professional. And so we want to do the work, make sure it's done right, and really protect the state as we go forward. Awesome.
I want to change gears just real quick. I noticed, Paul, are you joining us from your home today?
I'm actually teleworking.
Yeah,
yes. I'm connected on a secure VPN.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. I want to jump on that real quick, because that's actually a topic that's going on a lot right now. Paul, I'm guessing a lot of your workforce is teleworking. I know at OMES we have something like 93% of our employees teleworking. And Matt, can you just speak real quickly of the importance of security of our state workforce continuing services, even though a lot of us are working from home a lot of days? What does your team do to ensure security on that end?
Oh, we work hard. Obviously, that's an oversimplification. Really, when we did the big work from home push last, March?
Yep.
We completely changed it completely changed the model for cyber defenses for the state.
Wow,
right?
Okay.
Previously, the majority of state employees came into the office. They were on the state network. We could have more of a castle and moat model for cybersecurity, where we build all the defenses. We gear it so we keep everybody out, right? Or if we drop the drawbridge from time to time, we've got good eyes on what's coming in and out, and we can deal with a problem if it happens.
Right.
With work from home, there are no castle walls. And so we've had to really kind of think through both from the perspective of personal devices and allowing state employees to use personal devices, which we haven't really done in the past.
Right.
But then also now we've got state assets that are in personal networks, and that presents a unique risk in and of itself too.
Right.
So we've done a lot in terms of, you heard Paul mention a secure VPN. We've rolled out an entirely new host-based VPN solution, as well as a proxy solution. And I promise I'm not going to completely geek out on you. But basically that VPN, what that does is it creates a secure tunnel between that state asset and the state network. So it's just like you're behind the castle walls.
Wow, okay.
Right? The proxy solution, what a proxy does is Paul's going to go to a website and he's going to try to go to CNN.com, and that proxy is going to quickly determine if that's a safe website for him to go to or not. And if it is, he doesn't even notice, right?
Right.
He just goes straight to it. If it's not a safe website, then it's going to block him and say, hey, if you feel like you need access, you need to contact Oklahoma Cyber Command, and we'll go through and vet that.
Let me follow up on that real quick, just something that OMES helped us with. So I mentioned earlier, the state election board does have supervisory authority over the county election boards. There are 77 of those. Now, those are actually county agencies, but they work within the state election system because we have a uniform statewide system. And one of the big things that one of the big threats out there is phishing. PHISH, which is Matt, if I mess up this explanation, jump in. But basically, it's a fraudulent email pretending to be something that it isn't, and they might put fraudulent links in, hoping that you click on it, and you think you're going to your Citibank account, and in reality, you're giving some hackers your credentials that get into your system somehow. And that's a real threat for everybody, but especially for election officials. And one of the things that OMES helped us do was extend the state email system to county election boards, even though they are not state agencies. They all have an OK.gov email address now for their main election board email, and because those emails are secured through Cyber Command systems and through the OMES email systems, it provides an added layer of protection, not just for the state election board, but to all 77 county election boards, and they've been able to do that very affordably, and I think that was a huge step up in the overall security of the election system. Wouldn't you agree, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to go back to a comment that Paul made just a minute ago, and he glossed over it.
Okay.
But I want to draw attention to it because in my mind, it's one of the biggest factors as to why the state of Oklahoma has secure elections.
Okay.
It's because the state leadership had the foresight to centralize our election system.
Wow.
When I talk to my counterparts in other states, a lot of them, I mean, it's at the county level. Each county may have their own system, or maybe even lower than that in municipalities.
Right.
In having a single system, a lot of people will say, well, now all your eggs are in one basket. From a cybersecurity standpoint, it's way easier for me to defend one target than it is in 77 if every county in the state had it. So that's a huge differentiator for the state of Oklahoma from an election standpoint, at least from my viewpoint.
Yeah, and the uniform system, what that means is we have the same voting devices, same ballots, same computer systems that run elections in all 77 county election boards across the state. And as Matt said, if you went to our neighbors to the south in Texas, they're a county-based system. So every county would have a different security system that, or a different election system, voting system that is different from place to place to place. And I don't want to, obviously we don't want to get into too many details because we don't want to give people ideas, but even with a uniform system, we still have, each of the 77 county election boards are siloed. And so while there is a uniformity and an interconnection with that system, the individuality of each of the 77 counties also is a protection, because even if you had an incident in one county, it doesn't mean it affects the overall 76, the way we have structured the security. And again, not getting into any details because you never want to give people ideas, but we've done a lot of things over the years to help make sure that the elections are protected, and that if you did have a situation in one county, it doesn't bring down the whole system.
Well, that's just another example. As a lifelong Oklahoman, right? Oklahoma is the only place I've ever really voted. I took that for granted. You don't think about those things about why Oklahoma is so secure, and it's forward thinking, like you mentioned, from our state leaders. So, as I mentioned before, you both are behind the scenes, absolutely essential for our state, both in election security, cybersecurity, everyday cybersecurity of what your team does. So first off, I want to thank you both for what you do for our state. It's absolutely, a pleasure to have you on the show to talk about it, but thank you for the services that you provide for Oklahomans.
Best job I ever had.
Love it.
Yep, I'll echo that.
Well, thank you both again for coming on the show. And this is really, again, just a great opportunity for us to talk about the services for Oklahomans. I want to thank you both for what you do. If you're listening online, be sure to like, comment. If you have questions on anything, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have on any of these topics. But when you see this come out, make sure you like and share, and leave a positive comment for Paul and Matt and all that they do for our state in protecting Oklahomans. So, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate you guys, and thank you guys online for listening. We'll talk to you soon on the next episode of the GSD Podcast. Thanks, guys.